So you requested it, here it is. It was the dawn of a new decade with some of the most intriguing music of the rock era and some of the most interesting stories, I might add, including an incredible song that hit #1 and the icon behind it was livid when it did. In fact, she was so pissed she made a blatant decision right then and there to do everything in her power to be a one-hit wonder, even though she could have had dozens of hits. Plus a song MTV forced a band to edit because it showed a horse's butt during a controversial sound. And then there was the icon who died of an overdose and then came back to life and immediately wrote the band's best song. Plus the heart-wrenching song that came when a supermodel broke up with an average-looking rocker, but then he wooed another supermodel right after her. Plus the rocker that was written when a guy came home from tour and tried to call his girlfriend and got devastating news. It became a haunting epic. So many classics on our top countdown of a special year. Next on Professor of Rock, brought to you by Acorns Early. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember reading comic books right off the rack, one of those little stores, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll find something to enjoy on here. We got a lot of great interviews and stories coming up. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on Apple and Spotify at the link below. All right, so we've counted down every year from 1965 to 1989, and you guys said that you wanted to venture into the first couple of years of the 90s and maybe the first 4 or 5 years of the 60s. So we're going to get into it. This one's actually pretty good. See if you can guess the year. I'll give you a couple clues. George H.W. Bush was our president, and the wall had just come down, and people were dealing with that. We also had Dick Tracy, Dances with Wolves, and Ghost that killed it at the box office. On TV, you had Twin Peaks and Northern Exposure. And, you know, it was a year that there was pop and rock, and it was right before a huge musical tsunami washed everything away. There's still some great songs in this countdown. Let's start it off talking about the year 1990. And I'm going to do top 12. Top 12 songs of 1990 begins with Concrete Blonde, the song Joey. Concrete Blonde lead singer Johnette Napolitano avoided writing the lyrics to Joey until the last possible moment due to the difficult nature of the subject matter. When this song first came out, I thought it was Ann Wilson. She actually has that tone in this song for sure. The song was about her stormy relationship with Marc Moreland, the former lead guitarist for the band Wall of Voodoo. Marc was a heavy alcoholic, and Johnette tried desperately to help him, but couldn't. She had the words she wanted to express in her head and wrote the song in a cab on her way to a photo shoot. Just came to her, dropped out of her. Tragically, Marc Moreland died of liver failure in 2007. Marc and Johnette became a couple, and Concrete Blonde and Wall of Voodoo played gigs together in LA during the 80s. The two eventually severed their romantic ties, but they collaborated on an album together called Pretty and Twisted in 1995. Joey was the last song written and recorded for Concrete Blonde's third album, Bloodletting. It was the second single from the album and the only Concrete Blonde song to make it into the Billboard Hot 100. It peaked at number 19, but it was a #1 track on the alternative rock chart. All right, slinking in at number 11 on the top 12 songs of 90, I've got Black Velvet by Alana Miles. You know, near the 10th anniversary of Elvis Presley's death, Christopher Ward, a talented songwriter and music enthusiast, was visiting Memphis as a VJ for Much Music, Canada's premier music channel.
Christopher Ward with you on RSVP. Now, what do you think the following viewers have in common?
What started as a routine assignment quickly turned into something much more profound. While in Memphis, Christopher immersed himself in the city's rich musical history, and the fervor of Elvis fans gathered there. Everywhere that he looked, he saw fans mourning and celebrating and revering the king of rock and roll. And their passion was contagious, and it made him think about what Elvis represented. I mean, not just as a star, but as a symbol of hope and struggle and identity for those who grew up in the South. So Christopher put the song together with David Tyson and gave it to his then girlfriend, Canadian singer Alana Miles. I mean, Christopher was her boyfriend, but Alana delivered an amazing vocal on Black Velvet. In fact, she won a Grammy Award for Best Female Rock Performance for that, and she also won several Juno Awards. ASCAP awarded the song a Millionaire Award. That's for over 4 million radio plays in the U.S., and the single topped the Billboard Hot 100. It also went to number 1 throughout Scandinavia and number 2 in the UK, Belgium, Austria, and New Zealand. Massive song. Well, in the words of lead vocalist Mike Patton, what should be the saying of 90, you want it all, but you can't have it. The epic declaration by Faith No More is at number 10 on our countdown. Code words and mystery lyrics here. Decades-long feud with Red Hot Chili Peppers over stolen dance moves. The parting of the Red Sea, and the most controversial fish in all of music video history. And somehow, all this is connected to one amazing song, Epic by Faith No More. The song was a riddle, and it came right after they fired their singer Chuck Mosley. A new singer came right in and wrote the lyrics to the band's killer riff immediately. Mike Patton killed it with Epic's lyrics. They knew it was a hit, but the record label, they didn't care. They chose the band's first single, and when it flopped, they told this group that they could pick the next one. It not only ignited this band's fortunes, some argue it invented a new genre, rap metal. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, you tell me. But so many styles were represented in this song. It had everything, everything but the kitchen sink. I think it had the kitchen sink. And the famous fish out of water that flopped around in the music video, it sent animal activists through the roof. But no fish was hurt during the filming. And then there's the riddle of what is it, and what is it? It's repeated throughout the song, and it became something that everybody tried to solve, and yet it doesn't have a deep literal meaning. It's more about reinforcing the song's raw intensity and helping build a climactic moment. You could say that it's a vocal and musical device that amplifies the song's frantic, rebellious spirit rather than a phrase with a specific meaning. Now, the label Slash Records was on the verge of dropping Faith No More until they recreated this, and it ended up having great consequence, saved their record deal. It became their biggest hit, and it broke the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 at number 9, and rose to number 2 in New Zealand and number 1 in Australia. They started a musical revolution a full year and a half before Nirvana was even heard from. Next up at number 9 on the countdown of the top 12 of 90, I've got a sad one. It's Fly to the Angels by Slaughter. Fly to the Angels was inspired by the tragic loss of a former girlfriend. I spoke with Mark Slaughter about the surprise and devastation behind this emotional power ballad. Here's what he told me.
Don, a friend of mine that we grew up together, and I said, hey, man, I don't have Cindy's number, as a girl from high school that we dated, and I'd like to see her. I want to talk to her. And he said, okay, well, I'll find her number. And then he calls me and he says, Mark, I have some really bad news. And I go, what's that? He goes, well, I found Cindy, but he goes, her funeral's tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
And I walk in this mortuary, and the whole place is filled with roses. And that's where the line hit me. I said, fly the angels, flowers bloom in your name. Right then. That's when it hit me. I come up with the idea. I said to Dana, I go, I got the idea, fly the angels, heaven awaits your heart, and flowers bloom in your name, but I don't have anything else in the song. And I played the chords, and he's like, that's great. And he said, what if we did kind of a Zeppelin-y thing in the middle of it? And so that descending Zeppelin, down, down, that. And again, that's the two writers writing together where the song needs to go and what that is and how to let go of somebody when they pass. And when it's natural, it came, I was writing the lyrics down on a pizza box. We had the song structure.
I want to mention our sponsor. You know, I have this friend who used to give her kids a fake credit card, the real credit limit and everything, just to teach them financial responsibility. And I remember thinking, what a great idea. And then I discovered Acorns Early, and wow, it takes that whole concept to the next level. It's a smart app and a debit card made just for kids ages 6 to 18. It helps them learn how money works in real life. Saving, spending, earning, and it helps parents manage it all, from tracking purchases to setting up chores and allowances. As a parent of 2 young kids, I'm all in on this. I only wish something like this existed when I was growing up. I also found out that on the Acorns Early app, you can even open an investment account for your child and learn about building wealth together. It's not just smart, it's a great way to connect with your kids about their future. Head to acornsearly.com/POR or download the Acorns Early app to help your kids grow their money skills today. Again, that's acornsearly.com/POR. Acorns Early Card is issued by Community Federal Savings Bank, member FDIC, pursuant to license by MasterCard International. T&Cs apply. Monthly subscription fee starting from $5 per month unless canceled. All right, and the track that we spotlight next is a lot different from the other songs on this countdown. At number 8, I've got Billy Joel with one of the saddest songs ever written, his introspective ballad, And So It Goes.
And so it goes, and so it goes.
You know, as with the start of every new decade since the 50s, the musical landscape was shifting at the dawn of the 90s. But some songs remained timeless, mostly because of their beautiful honesty. Among those is Billy Joel's And So It Goes, a gentle ballad that has become one of his most beloved songs.
In every heart there is a...
I mean, behind its delicate melody and poignant lyrics lies a story of vulnerability, acceptance, and the universal experience of facing the inevitable.
I feel I said too much.
Now, Billy wrote And So It Goes in '83, a full 6 years before it was released on the album. It's during a period of serious personal reflection for him. The song was inspired by his own struggles with relationships, with aging, and the realization that life often doesn't turn out the way we expect.
Seems I only felt the thorns.
It's a song about accepting life's ups and downs, about surrendering to the passage of time and finding peace amid uncertainty. And So It Goes is a reflection on the idea that even in moments of sadness or uncertainty, there's a quiet strength in surrendering to life's natural flow.
This is why my eyes are closed.
And So It Goes is such a powerfully emotive song, but I'd have to say my favorite lyric is in verse 3. But if my silence made you leave, then that would be my worst mistake. So I will share this room with you, and you can have this heart to break.
You can have this heart to break.
In reality, Billy Joel wrote this when supermodel Elle Macpherson broke his heart. That's where this sad song actually came from, Elle. But don't feel too bad for Billy Joel, because he went from Elle Macpherson to Christy Brinkley, who he actually married, and then 7 years later, he got a hit song out of it, Billy Joel. And So It Goes. It wasn't a big hit, from a chart perspective at least. It stalled at number 37 on the Billboard Hot 100, one of 33 hits he's had on the top 40. But it did well in Japan. It moved to number 12. And of course, it's endured, becoming one of his most beloved songs ever from a fan standpoint. Onward with our countdown of the top 12 songs of 90. We're at number 7, and I got Freedom 90 by the late George Michael. The title Freedom 90 was inspired by George Michael's feelings about the music industry's control over his image. He famously disliked the manufacturer persona he was expected to maintain, and this song became his rallying cry to break free from that facade. Remember the Saturday Night Live skit, Look at My Butt?
Look at it, Dennis! Look at my butt!
That's exactly what he wrote the song against. One of the most memorable aspects of Freedom 90, though, is its groundbreaking music video. I mean, instead of featuring George Michael, who's a good-looking guy, of course, it showcased a lineup of supermodels. And there was Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford and Christy Turlington, amongst many others. And they were lip-syncing the song. This was a really bold move, emphasizing the disconnect between image and identity. And it's really tough for a singer not to put himself in the music video when that's the product he's selling. Now, he initially wanted the video to feature real people from his life, but the concept evolved into casting supermodels to symbolize the superficiality of fame. The model's iconic lip-syncing performance became a statement on the emptiness of celebrity culture and the desire for genuine self-expression. Freedom 90, George Michael's anthem about embracing and staying true to who you really are, climbed to #1 in Zimbabwe and Canada, but went to #8 here on the Billboard Hot 100. I think it's one of his best songs. Gliding in at #6, it's the B-52s of the Rome on the countdown of the top 12 of 90. The B-52s are such a fun band. They were one of the purveyors of the new wave movement for sure in the late 70s, early 80s. But in 90, they gave us Rome, a track that captured the spirit of adventure, encouraging us to explore beyond our comfort zone. Actually, I had a really cool conversation about Rome with Cindy Wilson. Here's what she said. Robert Waldrop, who designed the cover for Wild Planet, wrote the lyrics.
Yeah, the B-52s, we did that a lot. We invited some friends to, bring on some lyrics. It really was inspired. Simple song that with a kind of anthem-like feel. We like anthems too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that distinct part that begins at "I hear a wind." Whistling air, whispering in my ear. Was that part of the original composition that he wrote, or did you guys?
Who wrote? Oh, no. That was Kate and I.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because that's how you guys come in on that. That had to have been, it feels like almost a separate part of the song.
What we did is Robert, wrote the lyrics, but it was a poem. It wasn't constructed like a song. So Keith had the music. He brought it in, and Kate and I jammed with the lyrics over the music, and that's how we structured it and made it more of a song.
Well, I love your second verse when you come in because there's so much angst there. The way that you approach the skip the airstrip to the sunset. Ride the arrow to the target one, take it to the hip to hip.
Yeah. It's a very poetic song, and it's still to this day. You wouldn't believe the reaction we get for Rome. People, are almost sobbing. They're so inspired.
So the song that everyone thought was about exploring the world was actually a code word or euphemism for exploring another naked human. The song was code for sex, of course, and Cindy Wilson shared the lead vocal duties with Kate Pearson. As the third single from Cosmic Thing, it actually tied Love Shack for the highest chart position reached by the B-52s. Went to #3 in the Billboard Hot 100. Also, the B-52s were nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group for Rome. Rolling along on our countdown of the top 12 songs of 90, our next track on the countdown was a wake-up call to break the cycle of violence. Coming in at #5, I got Janie's Got a Gun by Aerosmith. Janie's Got a Gun sparked important conversations about child abuse and domestic violence, issues often swept under the rug or not really covered in pop songs or rock songs. Its controversial lyrics and stark message challenged the band's audience and the music industry to really confront uncomfortable realities. The song won a Grammy for Best Rock Vocal Performance. It remains one of Aerosmith's most powerful and socially conscious songs. Now, Steven Tyler disclosed that the song was inspired by an article that he read in Time magazine about GUN violence. I don't know if I can say that on here. I've gotten in trouble before. Especially in the U.S. with accounts about shocking child abuse in affluent suburban markets. Stephen couldn't believe how rampant the news stories were about well-to-do mothers and fathers attacking their own kids. Writing the lyrics, that was a way for him to process his anger about abuse and the importance of speaking out. The lyrics were meant to be provocative, force listeners to confront a difficult subject that was often ignored in mainstream media at that time. Stephen had to tone down his anger for the final version of the song, though, in order to get any kind of radio play. Steven Tyler had a very harsh F-bomb in the song that A&R man John Kolodner forced him to rewrite. Stephen went nuts. No way he was changing it. But then after some thoughtful meditation, he realized he wanted millions of people to hear it, so he toned it down. That was important because Janie's Got a Gun gripped listeners across the world. Went to number 2 in Canada, number 4 here on the Billboard Hot 100, number 2 on the mainstream rock chart, and number 1 down under in Australia. The thing about this song is really special. I can't say enough about the first 30 seconds to the first minute of the song. It's the most haunting first 30 seconds of a rock song that I can think of. What about you? What do you think? Riding in at number 4 on the top 12 of 90. Got the Bad Boys of the Sunset Strip. Came from a crazy place. Motley Crue would Kickstart My Heart from Dr. Feelgood. In the 80s, Motley Crue bassist Nikki Sixx faced a near-death experience. After an overdose from a certain drug that I can't say on here, he was declared dead and was resuscitated by paramedics. That moment of fighting for his life became a turning point for him, an eye-opening wake-up call about the dangers of addiction and the thrill of feeling alive. For Nikki, it wasn't just a terrifying experience, it was a second chance at life. The song was born out of his adrenaline-fueled realization that he needed to have a new lease on life and really embrace every moment with intensity. The title itself, that's a metaphor for that rush, the feeling of being kicked into gear and feeling the power of life pulsing through a human heartbeat. Kickstart My Heart was written in just a couple hours, fueled by Nicky's raw emotions and the band's propensity for high energy. In fact, legend is that Nicky wrote it right after he came back from the dead. Now, Vince Neil, whose lead vocal was captured in a single take, and it's a great one, no matter how he sings now. He came up with the chorus melody after a late-night jam, and the song's explosive riff was crafted during a feverish recording session. Kickstart My Heart is a perfect storm of adrenaline and emotion. It raced to number 18 on the mainstream rock chart and number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now comes the time in this countdown where we get down to the heart of the matter. The masterpiece by Don Henley, Mike Campbell, and J.D. Souther. Got that one at number 3 on the countdown of the top 12 of 90. I've been trying to get down to the heart of the matter. One of my personal favorite songs of all time. Now, this was the third single from Don Henley's brilliant solo album, The End of the Innocents, a track that's so beautiful and poignant, people actually weep when they hear it. I feel a tear every time. So here's the story behind the heart of the matter as told in conversations that I had with Mike Campbell and the late J.D. Souther.
I had a guitar, and I liked this chord, which I learned from Bob Dylan. And so I just mindlessly went and hit that chord, and that was it. It's a really strong lyric. Don really came through on that one. And I heard that song once at the Forum when I went to see Don on a solo tour, and he did that song, and the whole Forum sang along. And it kind of brought me to tears. It was so beautiful. It's such a beautiful lyric about forgiveness, And I think he said to me, it took me 20 years to mature enough to write those lyrics. But it's very true. Once again, the truth, shines through.
Talked to Mike Campbell about it, and he got pretty vulnerable about it. He said, it was like somebody else wrote it and gave it to me as a gift.
Yeah. It's funny. I said the same, when Don first played it to me, I said the same thing. I don't think Don didn't take it the way I meant it, but I meant it as a compliment. I said, Jesus, this guy's been reading my mail. exactly the song I would like to write. Second verse, which he mostly came up with in the vocal booth. But it's just brilliant. I think that second verse is one of the best verses I've ever heard. So.
Let's hope I don't get in trouble for this one. We're giving you lots of praise here. Don Henley made up a lot of this song right in the middle of recording it, as JD said. The Heart of the Matter was a number 7 single in Canada, number 3 on the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart, number 2 on the Mainstream Rock chart, but only went to number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100. I've always contended that it should have been a number 1. So we're up to the number 2 spot on our countdown of the top 12 of 90, and I'm going to break the rules a little, but I'm going to give it to the highest charting song by Depeche Mode. Enjoy the Silence, and mention Personal Jesus. Kind of a tie here, but Enjoy the Silence gets it. Enjoy the Silence was primarily written by Martin Gore, who inspired the idea that sometimes silence can be more powerful than words. In interviews, Martin explained that he was reflecting on the way modern society often equates noise and activity with importance, when in reality, true peace and understanding come from quiet reflection. Now, that sentiment is even more profound in 2025, I think. So to continue with Martin's idea for Enjoy the Silence, he wanted to craft a song that emphasized the importance of silence as a form of communication, a way to find clarity amid all the chaos. Words like violence break the silence. The lyrics, words like violence break the silence, and encapsulate the idea that words can often be destructive, whereas silence can be a form of strength. Now, Martin Gore was inspired by a conversation he had with some friends about how the absence of noise that can be more profound than the loudest expression. Enjoy the Silence became a sort of philosophical statement against the constant barrage of information and superficial communication that characterized that era. It definitely means more today than it meant then, for sure. Words are very unnecessary. Martin was heavily influenced by the ambient music scene and the song's layered synth textures that were designed to create a sense of space, an auditory landscape that invites reflection. Now, the use of a distinctive guitar riff, not really heard in many Depeche Mode songs, especially early on, those were played by Alan Wilder, and it added a raw emotional edge, grounding the song in human feeling despite its electronic foundation. Alan Wilder was really instrumental in morphing Enjoy the Silence from its original iteration that was very dark, slow, and atmospheric, as a track. He made it what it was, helped make it what it was, taking it from Martin Gore's original. He did that without losing its hypnotic vibe. Now, I want to break the rules a little bit here and talk a little bit about Personal Jesus. Which would have made my top 10 picks for 90, except for the rule of only going with one song per artist. Otherwise, it'd be a countdown full of Beatles and CCR and other songs. But Personal Jesus from Violator was a song that many radio stations wouldn't play because they thought it was sacrilegious. The video was even banned for a time by MTV, but not for that. The video was the first by Depeche Mode to get really big airplay on MTV. It was directed by Anton Corbijn. Has an Old West theme with the band dressed as cowboys. Now, during the heavy breathing section of the song, it's around 2 minutes and 20 seconds, there are some tight silhouette shots of Martin Gore huffing and puffing, and then there's a shot of a horse's hindquarters. Now, Martin Gore would admit, and I quote, "I don't know if Anton was consciously trying to be perverted here. I think it was more coincidental that it happened at that point in the video. These video people see things very strangely." MTV said, "No way, though," and they forced the director to make an edit on the silhouette breathing. And that was a version that they aired. Anyway, in terms of Enjoy the Silence in this song, Depeche Mode, they scored a number 1 on the alternative rock chart with Enjoy the Silence, and they had their best crossover success ever. Enjoy the silence. single climbed to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was an overall number 2 single in all of Europe, landing at number 6 in the UK and number 1 in Denmark and Spain. And although Personal Jesus wasn't as successful as Enjoy the Silence in terms of charts, it did set up Violator perfectly to be one of the biggest albums of the 90s. All right, we're up to the big moment on the countdown of the top 12 songs of 1990, and as usual, it was a really tough call. But the track that gets the nod for my number 1 of 90 is Sinead O'Connor and her powerful rendition of Nothing Compares to You.
It's been 7 hours and 15 days.
Although she didn't compose Nothing Compares to You, and wasn't even the first to record it, Sinead O'Connor made that song her own. She owns it. She had a performance for the ages.
Nothing can stop these lonely tears from falling.
Of course, it was Prince who wrote Nothing Compares to You. He recorded the demo of the song in 1984 when he was overcome with grief. It was because his housekeeper, a lady named Sandy Scipione, had to quit working for him because her father died of a heart attack. Prince was very fond of this woman. She kept his home in order and cooking and cleaning and pampering him, so he loved it. Prince wrote a classic, but he gave it to a band he formed named The Family.
It's been 7 hours and 13 days.
It featured his friend St. Paul Peterson and also his then girlfriend Susanna Melvoin. The Family's version was released and it quietly fell into the oh by the way file, generating very little airplay or attention at all.
Nothing compares to you.
Actually, Sinead's first manager, Faghna O'Kelly, brought Nothing Compares to You to her attention. O'Kelly had a hunch that she would bring something really special to Prince's song. Now, when O'Kelly presented Sinead's vocal demo of the song to Chris Hill, this was Sinead's co-director at Chrysalis Records, he was moved to tears, cried. Chris, too, believed that Sinead was born to record this song. It was hers. Perhaps even more moving than the recording was Sinead's imagery on the music video, though. The music video for Nothing Compares to You became one of the most played on MTV. It truly reinforced the authenticity of Sinead's vocal with a striking image of the singer shedding real tears.
Nothing compares to you.
A lot of tears on this one. Sinead, she lost her mother at a very young age. She related the song's themes of loss and longing to her own grief. She confided that the tears that she cried in the music video for Nothing Compares to You were real and totally unexpected. But she ultimately allowed them to flow, a very vulnerable moment. She recognized that their connection was to her personal experience with her mother's death.
Nothing compares to you.
It's got to be the most vulnerable music video ever recorded. While Nothing Compares to You was intended to be about lost love, Sinead, she found a deeply personal connection to it. And actually, the line that meant the most was, all the flowers that you planted, Mama, in the backyard all died when you went away. That really hit her. Sinead O'Connor's interpretation of Nothing Compares to You is such a remarkable example of how a singer can really change the meaning and the significance of a song into an entirely different experience. Method singing, right? Like method acting. And that's what Sinead did with Prince's song here. Even Prince himself had to acknowledge Sinead's incredible transformation of the song. He knew it was amazing. However, Sinead had an encounter with Prince that turned into something that was straight out of Twilight Zone. So His Purple Majesty was really happy to see the song become so popular. He was grateful to Sinead, and he wanted to meet her. The relationship became strained after this incident, when Sinead actually visited his LA home. She actually detailed it in her memoir. It was a distressing meetup where she claims that Prince criticized her for swearing. He attempted a pillow fight with a hard object and pursued her in his car after she fled his home. I mean, the vision of Prince chasing Sinead down a residential street is as comical as it is bizarre. That's a story that's hard to believe, but Sinead stuck by that for the rest of her life. As you probably recall, Sinead sadly passed away in July of 2023, 7 years after Prince died in 2016. Despite the incredible success of her emotional remake, though, which really could have solidified her as one of the greatest vocalists of her time, Sinead O'Connor chose to steer clear of commercial prosperity. She preferred to be a protest singer, not a pop star. Instead of concentrating solely on the merit of her music, really the remainder of Sinead's career was largely mired in controversy. In fact, she was angry when this song hit #1, and she really chose to be a one-hit wonder, even though she had plenty of songs that could have been commercial juggernauts. The definitive version of Nothing Compares You by Sinead O'Connor, it was a #1 smash in 20 countries. Canada, the UK, the Billboard Hot 100. It's also our pick for the #1 song of 1990. Even though I've shared the top 12, I do want to throw out an honorable mention from the only artist in history to have 7 top 5 hits from one album, including 3 straight years with a #1 hit from the same album. This is one of my favorite ballads ever, Come Back to Me by Janet Jackson.
Come back to me, I'm begging you please.
The epitome of a quiet storm. And I talked to Jimmy Jam, the co-writer and producer of the song. Here's what he told me about it.
So that's basically my chords that I like. I mean, whenever I'm in doubt and I'm trying to figure out something, I can always go to those chords and something's going to come up. But yeah, Come Back to Me is, I remember that one conjures up like a lot of, not so much in the studio doing it. I don't really remember doing it in the studio, but what I remember is when we were done at the end of the night, when we had done the track, I remember, this is the cassette days, I remember putting the cassette in my car, and I remember driving around, I think it was still kind of winterish time in Minnesota. I remember putting the song on and just thinking, wow, we got one here. Well, then when she did the lyrics and the vocals, because the great thing about Rhythm Nation was there was so much growth in her as a songwriter at that point.
Oh, yeah.
She came into it with so many ideas and so much confidence about writing because she knew that whatever she was saying was valid. That's, her lyrics and her melody, that's all her.
Well, that's our countdown of 90. What do you think? What are your memories of these songs? What is your top 10 of 1990? What did I miss? What did I leave out? Should we do 91, 92, 93 into 94? Again, I think the 90s, the first 4 or 5 years of the 90s are really good, and then I'll cover some of the 60s. Should we do the 50s? Let me know. Make sure to check out our podcast and make sure to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.